All right, this is going to be our second video, and this video I want to address to liberals and progressives. It's interesting. Sometimes you can have the same idea, pretty much the same exact plan, but say it's a libertarian idea or say it's a liberal idea. And for example, if you call into a radio show that's liberal, progressive, and you say you're a libertarian and present the idea, they could interrupt you and shoot it down. But if you then call into another progressive radio show and say you're a progressive with the same idea, they'll agree with it. So just be careful, because sometimes the same idea can be presented different ways, and you got to look at the actual policies and the outcomes. So anyway, today's idea I want to talk about is education. I'm going to present it as a libertarian talking to liberals. If you look at our education system, and I'm talking about on the state level as well as the federal Department of Education, you can see how much money is being spent on educating the kids. But if you look around the world, you'll find that our outcomes are much worse than a lot of other countries, even countries spending less money on education. So how could that be? How is it that all this money is being spent and we don't have a system that produces actually measurable improvements in children's education? So we're here at Asser Levy Playground for a random reason, because I played chess here with older guys in the park. Anyway, so let's look at the system. Let's look what happens when you actually put more money on the city level into the system, as when Mark Zuckerberg, for example, put $100 million into Newark's public schools a few years ago. If you fast forward to 3 years later, you can look at the news articles and you can see that no measurable improvements have been made in any student's education, especially the average. And so you can ask, well, what happened to that money? And you can trace that. But I want to talk about a system which would improve on the current system a lot, but it's a bit of a radical change, and so it might never be implemented in the US, or at least not for the next 10 years. So that system is not new. It's called flipping the classroom. But I wanted to talk about that plus a few other things. So if you have kids, you probably know that they have a hard time sometimes sitting still in school. Our current school system makes them sit for maybe 7-8 hours a day, right? Listening to lectures by a teacher who's talking at the same time to 30 students. If they want to go to the bathroom, then they miss a few minutes. They have to ask for notes later. If they're just zoning out, which a lot of kids want to daydream, well, then they have attention deficit disorder and they have to be medicated. If you actually look at hiccup there, so about attention deficit disorder, actually, Thom Hartmann, the #1 right now progressive radio talk show host in America, he has some interesting theories about ADD, where he talks about how human society kind of evolved with hunters and farmers, and genetics for the farmers are sort of to sit still and focus, and with the hunters is more to look around and, oh, what's that? And have some ADD. So it's an interesting theory, and he says that both both types of genetics are valuable in society and in different societies. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And that's why, speaking to liberals, I would definitely bring this up. And look, your kid doesn't have to sit in the 21st century listening in a classroom that's the same as, in the Roman Empire, they had scribes sitting and copying notes from someone dictating. It's like they're sitting in the 2nd century classroom. Why not instead flip the classroom? And if you have a great teacher in a great school, have that teacher work with a whole team and create a engaging multimedia presentation that's then delivered to all the kids. So to the kids that don't have a computer at home, give them a tablet, give them an iPad, obviously parentally controlled and all that, and then have a marketplace of lectures, I say lectures, presentations, engaging presentations for kids And that's basically the commodity. Delivering information is the commodity in the 21st century. What's not a commodity these days is individual attention. So all those teachers that are spending their time trying to control the class would be much more useful teaching remedial smaller classes to kids who are falling behind. So the kids could actually, every day when they go into school, take a test for the previous day, the previous day's lectures that they were supposed to listen to on their own time, taking responsibility for getting their homework done, except in this case homework would be what you do in school currently. They go and they basically test out of that subject for that day. If they pass, then they don't have to take the subject. If they are exceptional, or they want to become exceptional, they could go into an honors class and improve on a faster track. And if they fail for that particular day, they go into remedial class. So it'll actually be cool among kids to test out, which means it'll be cool to study, which is something new for them. So if they actually go in the morning, they have a nice breakfast, they don't wake up at 6 a.m. and they just go into school at a normal time, they get enough sleep, they get the breakfast, they test out, and that will actually be what they strive for. For the first time, it might actually be cool for the kids to get together with their friends and go through those lectures. But there's more than that. Instead of having standardized testing, which is every year, these companies could actually do daily testing. And so they could have a feedback process. If 90% of the kids fail on a particular morning, that means the previous day's lecture presentation was not good. And that company will then go back and redo that day. So next year's kids will have a measurable improvement. That's the kind of feedback mechanism we're talking about. And forcing kids to stay in their seats the whole day is really pointless when you can deliver the information to them. They can go to the bathroom, they can pause it, they can rewind it. They can ask questions which they otherwise wouldn't ask in class because they're too shy. And you could do this in colleges, which is much more likely because public school is used basically as it's like a daycare center. So when two parents are working now, both the mom and the dad are working, or a single parent household is working, the kids have to be in school. This is also, of course, a liberal idea, because all those kids that can't afford tutoring to get into that good school, to pass that exam, and we had this even before standardized tests. We had citywide tests in New York. We had admission tests for schools like Stuyvesant. All these tests, obviously, there's a lot of competition, and if they can afford a tutor, the parents will pay for that. So this helps kids in those schools which are disadvantaged and don't have these teachers. If there's a great teacher, he should be able to reach all the kids everywhere, he or she. And that's my point. You can replace textbooks with iPads, and you can replace standardized testing that's yearly with standardized testing that's daily, and you can have feedback mechanisms, and you can have the kids actually take responsibility for their own time and teach them about responsibility and planning their own time and the value of education, which in their terms will mean having more of a free day and playing with their friends. So that's what I propose. I think it could be done in colleges. I think it could be done in charter schools. And a libertarian minded person might say that charter schools are better when there are vouchers. And there's a program where people can choose to go to those experimental schools, and you can test these ideas in the marketplace. Because if we have a monopoly on the way education is run, top down, it's slow to change. And while the rest of the world might try things like this, we probably won't. So this is what I suggest, and in this case I'm arguing for a libertarian position, or a liberal one. Take your pick. Thanks.